On the edge of our property, we have a brush wall. This is where Sasha and I live at our half-acre spot. A brush wall that we've been laying up and adding to for the last many years. It's a great habitat corridor for birds mainly, but also rabbits. And just recently we have some new neighbors that moved in that I'm sure are absolutely divine and wonderful folks. But I thought it would be nice to intensify the visual boundary that this brush wall confers, because really it's settling over time, and help insulate these new folks from some of the randomness of our view shed, which is we love it. We're caching all sorts of valuable and useful resources in the form of pots and water collected from roofs, and we've got compost piles and all that. But maybe as a nice way to introduce ourselves, we can mellow this view shed for them for a bit, and as we get to know them, decide either we can leave it up or bring it down and go in different directions, but not spend a lot of money to get there. In fact, the only money that we're going to spend on this is 3 T-posts, which I will pound in at a pretty generous spacing, probably like 12 feet apart, and wrap some wire around them. These I got used from somewhere, I forget, but maybe about 20 bucks worth. These are 8-foot posts. I'll use a post pounder to get them in, and the rest is all organic matter. You can see I started taking some old miscanthus. This is from our miscanthus giganteus plants that these stalks die back in the winter. They're not useful to the plant after that. We leave them for the winter as a snow break and a place for birds, and then cut them down in the early spring before new growth happens. And I took a bunch and stuck them in here, and I realized that if I actually had posts every little while and some taut metal wire, we'd be able to get a lot more vertical upwardness, a vertical intensification. And so we're going to do that first, and then I harvested from our main 6-acre site a whole bunch of old miscanthus stalks, as well as some bamboo. Bamboo being way stronger, way more long-lived. And so this will form a basic scaffold on which we can grow vining crops in the future. Maybe some beans and cucumbers next year, maybe some schisandra and kiwi in the long run, just to create a really verdant, lush wall of abundance for everyone to look at on either side of the fence. One in, about almost 2 feet in the ground, and it's pitched out towards me a little bit. We'll go right down the line, maybe one about 15 feet in and one in the far end. And then once the wire is on there, it'll draw them together a little bit and should straighten them out. The middle post is in, and the farthest post is in, and the nearest post is in. So now I'm going to run some wire at about 5 feet, and then another one at the very top to create a catch for all of this woven material. And I'm realizing, I really appreciate the fact that in the past we went through and added in these vegetative layers. There's elderberry here, there's 2 rows of willows that capture some of the runoff from when we get crazy rains or spring thaw. So there's a lot of living infrastructure, good woody, long-lived perennial plants that can be cut back and managed to facilitate more view or less view. It just feels like it's always worthwhile adding plants. I forgot that I planted Jerusalem artichokes down there, and some tulip trees and some high bush cranberries. So everybody can come together to orchestrate a beautiful, lush space that everyone can enjoy. And something I'm working around, and it's a good reminder to always be learning more and more of the plants around you. This is a shagbark hickory. Almost certainly a squirrel planted this little friend, so I made sure that this post is to the north of them so this can grow and become its own part of the tapestry of life that allows some light through and not in other spots. So now 2 sets of very simple wire loops run in between the posts. I would have filmed it, but it was awfully wonky trying to weave it through all this, and it's not as great a job as I'd like, but I think it's just going to be a good support system for as the grasses go through. They've got something holding them up. Mainly being stuck into this pile will hold their bases, but this will support the tops a bit, and we can tie off in there, here or there as needed. So now it's time to get a little bamboo woven in and see what that looks like. And it's going to take a little getting used to getting the bases to go through, but so far so good. Now let's try to get some more bulk bamboo in first, and then miscanthus as filler. Definitely have some more bamboo to weave in, so that's great. But my gosh, what an instant wall. That's about 12 feet tall. Really important side note I was just realizing as I was packing this in. If you live in an area that is prone to very, very dry conditions or fire conditions, this does not make any sense at all. We're in a pretty wet climate here, and I also have full intention of growing deep green, moist vegetation up and through all this. So it should become a much greener wall over time. But if you're in a very drought or fire prone area, don't mess around with this. It's giving a really nice jungle vibe back in here. Much more to weave in, but a whole lot more privacy for everyone involved. And an interesting addition for red squirrels and birds. They use this dead larch quite a bit, and weaving the bamboo through seems like an opportunity for vines to move through and maybe just easier corridors for small creatures to climb too, so hopefully that's useful. We're working on doing the miscanthus part and bringing over bundles at a time and weaving them through. I feel like this part's going to take a little while. That's an opportunity once I get them woven through the sets of wire to take the individual ones and feed them down wherever there's a little gap. And I think each one of these that gets fed down as deep as possible will really just help add to the strength overall. I realize another note to share with this is that I think if you're in an area with extremely high wind, this may not be a solution either. But in here we're buffered. We've got woods around, there's trees around, there's houses nearby. It gets some gusts here or there, but I think everybody being knit in with their bases deep in this existing brush pile should make it pretty stable. I think it's done enough that I'm going to call it good for today. It took about an hour and a half to put this all together, and that includes hammering in the 3 8-foot T-posts. That was the only real cost. The metal wire, I didn't use that much, but a couple dollars there. Let's say it was 20 bucks in total between the posts and the wire. The miscanthus and the bamboo harvested from our 6-acre site, and it's not completely rock solid tight, but I think that's good. It lets a little bit of air through. It feels a little bit more natural and a little less imposing, but that just goes on for days. It's about 16 feet tall or so. I hope our neighbors like the feel of it too. And of course we'll be adding another layer of actual living vining material on there, as I mentioned before, probably Schisandra, maybe some hardy kiwis, maybe some annuals in the short run. And having this old dead snag of a larch in front of us is really quite lovely because we can weave some of the branches up in there to support the load and take a little pressure from the wind out. And I left a little cache of leftover miscanthus when I was done off to the side that I can weave in if there's little gaps in the future or some parts fall or fail. And that's just hanging out over here by the Lumbermaster 3000, which is still standing after all these years. I'll take it as a good nudge to continue to clean and organize and stay on top of. Both Sasha and I try our hardest, but we just have so many moving parts. And with complex homestead systems, there's just lots of bits that have to be put places. So we'll keep organizing over here. And in the meantime, as our new neighbors get settled in and figure out their space, they've got way more wild vegetation to look at. And so do we. And hopefully the wild creatures this winter will appreciate the extra insulation and wind protection. We've added a little more on this side just to make it extra feral and deep. A little 3-dimensional fencing seems to be helpful. So let me know what you think, and maybe you've got some ideas of ways it could be improved or added to, or how you might go about it. Thanks for watching.